When I was writing this review, I wasn't sure what to call this because it's too short to be a movie, but it's not a series. This is a standalone 45-minute entry into the MCU. So when I was writing this, I kept deciding the film, it's not a film. It's not a show. So I'm just going to call it an MCU project in this review. So let's get started. So for a guy who got his start composing music and is a first-time director, Michael Giacchino was fantastic. And I really appreciate all the craft he put into this. First off, with the exception of the character of Man-Thing, everything else in this special is practical effects. The makeup, the sets, all of it. It's practical and old-fashioned, which is refreshing to see in the universe that's become more heavily reliant on CGI. The special also has an incredibly interesting and refreshingly different story. This does not feel like Marvel at all, or even a comic book project. It feels like an old monster movie from the 40s. You could watch this not having seen anything in the MCU and still understand all of it. It also doesn't feel the need to make sly little references to other MCU projects, which for some people might be disappointing if you're one of those people that was expecting references to Moon Knight or Blade. No, it's standalone. Nothing else in the MCU is referenced, not even in passing for dialogue. I thought making this a standalone, at least for now, really worked. Because let's be honest, it's not really going to end up being standalone. At some point they're going to connect this. But for now, it stands on its own. So I also find it kind of funny that the character who is a werewolf, what do they call him? Jack Russell. Like a Jack Russell Terrier. The guy that turns into a dog is named Jack Russell. Yeah, that was a little corny. And, I looked up when the comic book that this is based on came out, and it came out in the 70s, so that was a bit of a cheesier time for comic books, so I'll give that a pass. Now, I complained yesterday in my review of the She-Hulk episode that came out that the MCU is running out of well-written female characters because they killed off Black Widow, they made Scarlet Witch a villain, and She-Hulk is just a gosh-awful role model. But the character in this, of Elsa Bloodstone, she is an example of how you write a female character correctly. Not only does she have a really interesting backstory, she also knows how to fight really well, and unlike a lot of other things like this where they have a female character and they have to remind you every 10 seconds, she's a girl, they just let the character be. They don't have to constantly put our bells and go, oh look, she's a girl, we wrote an awesome female character. They don't do that. They just let her be an awesome character. Also, there aren't any jokes in this. This is a very serious, fairly dark and gritty entry into the MCU, and it's also a bit more violent than the typical MCU. Thankfully, it's not as violent as Multiverse of Madness, because, in Multiverse of Madness, I felt the violence in that was played up more for shock value, whereas here, when it's done incredibly tastefully. Really, my only complaint is that it was too short. It's only around 45 minutes or so, and I really wish this were a full movie. And when it's too short is the only complaint, which, to be honest, it's also kind of a compliment because I wanted more of it, that it's definitely something worth checking out. So I give Marvel's Werewolf by Night a grade of an A+, a 10 out of 10, and a 5 out of 5 stars. It's one of the MCU's best projects this year, probably their best project since Moon Knight, which is good because everything else I've been a little bit mixed on. But this is fantastic. I really hope they do more stuff like this. And if this is Michael Giacchino's directorial debut, I really hope this man gets more work directing more stuff. This was amazing.